From our modern understanding, ancient civilizations used many fascinating techniques to construct their stone marvels. But could they have harnessed natural chemicals to melt and shape stone? Are there any ancient sites that provide evidence of this method?
Hey everyone, my name is Jay from the Voyager TV channel, and on this episode, I'm going to show you some evidence I found of ancient humans melting stone. Come with me and let me show you what I found while traveling through South America.
The site that you see here in the mountains is called Pisac, located in Peru, South America. While these blocks were clearly not melted and shaped through chiseling, the original builders employed one intriguing technique at least 500 years ago, or perhaps much older. This will lead us to how some sites were created by melting stone using rudimentary techniques. The builders applied an acidic paste or bitumen to position the blocks. This paste contained a type of ancient sulfuric acid, which aided in breaking down the calcite and quartz compounds into andesite or granite, making the stone easier to chisel or abrade. It was placed between the two stones to help break down the material and close the gap after the block was roughly shaped to fit the wall. This would create a basic combustion or heat within the stone. This technique allowed each block to achieve a precise fit, characteristic of the ancient ashlar masonry they used. If these ancient builders possess advanced knowledge of chemistry and stone masonry, what other ancient technology might they have used in the distant past? Could they have had even more sophisticated technologies to alter stone that modern archaeologists and historians overlook or dismiss? There are strange markings located on a lower level on the other side of a giant mound called Puma Orco in Peru, South America. Nothing is left of the temple that resided up top except the floor bases for the structure that used to exist there. Halfway down the mound, there are ancient marks into stone that question the process of how these builders altered stone to create their temple. This is the site of Puma Orco. It's located on top of this giant mound. We'll find inserts for stone structures. It's the crevices you can see. It's possible if you can see right here. But we'll get a closer look. After walking along a jagged path around the giant mound, there is an area for where a stone altar used to reside. When you approach this altar, there are flat bases that used to hold stone blocks that made up buildings such as the one shown here in the smaller photograph. These flat bases are precisely leveled, and you can easily say that hand tools for measuring were used here to create these flat bases. Although on the top part of this altar has the markings that I'm referring to, these markings go into the circular shape cut out on the stone. You can see that the markings are present all over this insert. This means that these markings were specific tool marks left behind to create the circular insert. These markings are present all over the stone block, including the back side of it. You can see how this one specific area of the stone has these markings. But why only this area on a vertical slope? This large stone block comes out from the ground and wasn't placed here or seems like it has been moved, especially if it was millions of years old due to plate surface movement. These channels that are formed into the stone almost look natural, but they are formed in every direction. For water to form into these pockets from acidic rain, this would have been a flat surface for the water to rest on. This formation resembles the flow of lava that hardens into stone. But how would this small mound have these marks on all of its sides? An extinct miniature volcano? Seems unlikely. Or was there a way to alter stone or harness this much heat during the ancient past? Even on the other side of this entire altar, it has these ancient marks, but these are a little bit different, as these marks are at a slightly different angle and has a small circular base to it. Since these marks are found on the opposite side of the altar, this stone could have not been formed gradually over millions of years through a natural erosion process that typically leaves marks in limestone, known as limestone runnels. These limestone runnels, or karst features, are micro-scale features of solution-sculpted rock surfaces consisting of fluted, grooved, or funnel-like forms that are typically less than a meter in scale. These karst features, or also known as solution flutes, can be naturally created into limestone over tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years by acidic rain. As shown in these areas, they are similar, but there are major differences between these natural ones and the ones here at Puma Orco. Besides these marks left in the man-made circular indent up top, these indents along the side had indents consistently spread apart going downward. These show consistency of something being pushed into the limestone while this quick erosion process was occurring.
Some type of method to cut into the stone. Maybe it was a tool that was heated.
If there was some sort of tool, it would have to have the ability to heat and then cool rapidly while drilling or creating these marks. Although in the Americas and modern-day Mexico, there are giant pyramids such as Teotihuacan that must have taken a lot of tools and careful construction methods to create such a marvel. It's known that there was the use of drilling during Mesoamerican times. Here's a video of pottery showing precise drill marks into a complete granite vase. The question is, was there a drill or certain tools that could replicate the process of natural looking marks into stone? It's known that all over the world ancient humans used rudimentary methods and basic tools to carefully create sophisticated stone monuments. But could there be other methods or certain ways to create these marks by hand? Some of these marks are not evenly spaced out, which indicates that it was handmade. Some of these so-called natural marks look like they were formed like clay. Even up close, these ancient marks strikingly looks like the fingerprints into the limestone. It's uncanny that these marks are placed only in this location, but are there other places in this entire region where there are similar marks? Miles away, there is a place called Quenko that has these strange marks. When you emerge outside of the woods and overlooking the city of Cusco, there is a mount where these marks are located, which also have flat stone bases where megalithic temples used to reside. This ancient site has the same exact features as the altar at Puma Orco. All of these marks around the flat bases here do look like the natural formations of solution flutes or karst features into limestone, but they also have these karst features that go into the flat bases. This means that this process was done after the cuts into the rock were done. Or this means that the man-made rock formations are much older than any known civilization that existed. This can be simulated by applying diluted acid to the surface of the limestone, by using a mixture of vinegar or a diluted solution of hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid. What if there was a chemical process that these ancient builders used alongside their stonemasonry skills that mimicked the natural process that creates the solution flutes? Were these marks created by using chemicals while stone drilling or chiseling? During the 15th century and earlier, the Inca Empire fermented vegetables to create alcoholic drinks while also making vinegar. There are many tunnels in Peru that were used over thousands of years for different purposes. Some mines were used for burial chambers, some for religious ceremonies, and some for extracting raw materials from. The Incas dug deep into the ground and created deep mines to gather certain ore and other materials. One material that was important to this process is the pyrite mines that also included pyrite mud. The Inca collected this mud in order to create an acidic solution. Other caves had temples built into them, and besides being used for ceremonial reasons, they were used to obtain other materials such as guano from bats. This sacred Inca cave entrance is one of the entrances where multiple bats resided. The Inca created niches on the sides of the cave for other blocks to lay up against. Even further into the cave, they also had niches on the sides. Was this for ceremonial purposes, or was it for a more practical reason to gather more guano before it was reused by later civilizations? Adding back guano to the mixture of sulfuric acid and pyrite mud would make the mixture highly acidic and accelerate the breakdown of the pyrite. The combination of this would decompose the limestone at a faster rate, creating more sulfur-based compounds like sulfur dioxide. This would then produce various gases which will become visible like steam. This would also work on granite or andesite, as it would break down the quartz crystal inside of the stone, making abrasion much easier to sculpt the stone down. In the article named Mining and Metallurgy in Ancient Peru by George Peterson from 2011, it explains how the Inca were advanced stonemasons during the past. He talks about the use of tools that are primitive but used in a sophisticated way to harness ore and alter stone. He specifically mentions the Inca made use of sand, mud, clay, plaster, and marl. They used all sorts of hardening material to use, but also a bitumen. He mentions that with this bitumen, the joints were almost invisible. Usually, only the exterior portion of the block was finished. A very thin layer of cement made of a mixture of oily, sticky material was used to set the block in place. The interior of the wall was filled with ordinary materials. Oily mortar or bitumen was used. This bitumen would also have acidic compounds in it such as pyrite and guano. They would also use certain plant material that had basic acidic compound in it such as marigold or tagetes, which was used for acidic paste. Even though their empire lasted a few hundred years, where did they discover this unique stonework construction technique? Was this a knowledge spread throughout the world during antiquity? Where did it come from? To help us learn more about this ancient knowledge, we need to investigate one answer to a question that we know of, which is, where else was this specific knowledge used throughout South America? At the ancient complex called Sacsayhuaman lies giant polygonal andesite and limestone blocks that create multiple walls. These monoliths created a giant temple complex that used to exist here until it was deconstructed by the Spanish conquistadors in the 1500s. What's significant about this place is how they constructed the walls.
What we're looking at here is one of the large blocks of Sacsayhuaman. It's a corner piece. But what I wanted to show everybody is part of the process of which they construct this or place this on top. And a lot of these large stones, they have a ridge here. Maybe 2, 3, depending on how large the stone is. There's always one here. And as we look, there's always a little indent. It's a little hard to see, but you can definitely feel it. It goes in more. Let's look at another one. Here's another one. It just comes out of the rock. It's a protuberating out of the rock. And it's a little indent. Show you one more. There's another one, but as we can see, the whole entire wall, each block has them. Why? While they were placing these stones here, obviously it's very heavy, and to make these clean cuts so they can precisely fit up against each other, they had to lift and raise it and lower it back down again. So what they would do is take a large piece of wood here. It wouldn't be that giant, excuse me, but a tree can hold a lot of weight vertically. If something's, putting weight from the top down, can hold a lot of weight. So what they would do is they would place the tree here, the wood, and it would come down on the ground. And what they would do is just leave it up and chisel around. Yeah, let's look at another one. See how they're all protuberating out of the rock, and they all have an indent underneath. This is a side wall of Sacsayhuaman. And as we're looking at these stones, we could see a discolorment on the stones, maybe like an orange, light brown color. And a lot of it almost seems like it's like paint of some sort. It always seems like it's running down from the rock. Now, some people say that, okay, well, these andesite rocks have iron in them, and iron rust over time with water. But that's not the case, because why aren't all these stones colored that brownish orange color? And why are they always in between the cracks here? It's always around the outside. So why is that? What they were doing is using a certain chemical base. Now this is close to a sulfuric acid, and what it would do is break down the quartz in the andesite, or if it was granite as well, it would break down the quartz and make it much easier to chisel down. They would also use a rock and smooth it out, which is called abrasion. And over time, this would make the rock softer. A lot of people say, oh, it's a special way of making the stone soft like putty. It's not true. What they mean is the stone doesn't become soft like clay, but it becomes more brittle, becomes easier to chisel down. Another example up here. There's always a lighter color around the edges. Some might be dripping down. Let's get a little bit closer. Always a little bit lighter in between the cracks. And of course, you're also asking, what is this chemical? How did they get it? Well, sulfuric acid is not completely hard to make. I mean, the ancient Egyptians were using natron. It's like a vinegar and baking soda mix. So the ancient builders here would also use a similar method.
In a city not so far away from Cusco, where Sacsayhuaman is located, is a place called Ollantaytambo. This site has megalithic blocks scattered throughout the surrounding mountain, as there used to be a temple up top. This temple has the same type of ashlar masonry as the Viracocha temple in Cusco, along with Sacsayhuaman. You will see the creases have the same discolorment, meanwhile holding a very precise fit in between each block. But below the mountain temple also lies more evidence of melted stone. Throughout the streets of the city of Ollantaytambo has megalithic blocks that the current residents still use today for their houses and stores. In the city, there lies a doorway with megalithic blocks still being used today for the entrance. The blocks are huge and also fit together precisely using the same masonry style as the other ancient temples. These stone blocks also look like they are in good condition for being incredibly old. Although, right next to it lies a strange block that looks different from the rest. This block has irregular lines that swipe across it from the top left going down to the bottom right. These strange striations look like the same lines that we saw earlier at those two separate ancient complexes. These striations wrap around the side of the block and then recess into it. The entire stone has these lines only on the outside of it. While taking a close look at it, we can see that these grooves are directly a part of the rock and not added afterwards like a cement repair. These deformations in the rock are original, as we can see each groove extrude from the rock and also recess back into it. It makes you wonder if these stones were all created in a similar process. Why leave marks on this stone? And what are these marks from? While looking at these striations, I tried to see the exact design it creates. These lines start in the top left and they're the thickest in this area. They appear to have 5 channels in between the lines that all swipe down to the bottom right. The lines also slowly morph into the rock the lower they go while reaching the lower base of the stone block. The space that makes up the channels that swipe from the top left to the bottom right create a very familiar shape. It almost appears to have been from some type of large handprint that swiped across the block's surface. It looks like there were perhaps 3 swiping attempts across the stone block starting from the top going down. The lower portion of this block looks like the grooves start from the left then go to the right. It's possible that an ancient stone altering technique, such as a geopolymer method, was used, but this does not explain how the grooves are completely a part of the stone and not put together like a paste. This would imply that the stone must have been heated to an extremely high temperature and then cooled rapidly. Little is known about the origin of these stone blocks, as the Inca have attested that these original builders came from their gods or ancestors. It's quite possible that there was an ancient process to alter the stone, including a geopolymer method. But these were master stonemasons of the past. They would have used multiple stone shaping techniques, which are perhaps lost to us today. The method used to create these blocks remain a mystery. Were these sacred places and precise stonework created by an ancient technique? From a lost civilization that has now become a myth? Or could this actually be the handprint of the gods? The key question we need to answer is whether these builders could have had the ability to generate enough heat to melt stone in a refined manner. I believe they could have. While ancient smelters and blast furnaces were used in antiquity, mainstream academia says that the Incas during the 1500s did not employ any smelting techniques. In this video, you'll see a large granite stone box which is located in the Coricancha temple in the ancient city of Cusco in Peru, South America. This was used for stone smelting, metallurgy, and perhaps even for mixing chemicals. But in this video, we see a massive granite box with interlocking joints at each corner. It couldn't have been used for smelting. There's no way it could trap enough heat. But could it have served as a mold? It's not a door or wall, and its design suggests the pieces could detach. Was it part of a more advanced purpose? Could these ancient builders have used these giant granite boxes to cast stone and metal? The Inca Empire was thought to have existed for only a few hundred years until the Spanish conquest in the 1500s. The Inca were known as conquerors during their time before the Spanish arrived and absorbed other surrounding civilizations into their own. Long before the Inca, numerous civilizations thrived, including the Wari civilization. Even earlier, there was a Shavan civilization, and well before that, the Karal Supe civilization, dating back to 3500 BCE. This dates back to the same time as the ancient Sumerian civilization, which is considered one of the earliest. It was especially known to be more advanced as they left ruins of sophisticated cities with the use of step pyramids. In the photo in the bottom center, it shows a single vertebrae of a blue whale. This was simply used for a chair, but this shows that they had enough maritime technology in order to hunt whales. The civilizations after these did not have these achievements. If the earlier civilizations were more advanced, what other technology could they have harnessed in order to melt stone? I traveled deep into the Andean highlands in South America, and I found something that reveals what ancient technology actually is, and how they could have used this to melt stone. Here at the ruins of Kanamarka, modern archaeologists have uncovered a large town that covers this entire hill. These ruins are now reconstructed, but what the archaeologists found below were advanced stonework beneath the primitive stone houses. These blocks are all different and are very precisely joined together that resembles the advanced stonework that we saw before. These areas with the advanced blocks were supposedly used for funerary purposes beneath the houses. But this theory seems illogical, as the layouts vary. Each civilization typically had a specific method for burying their dead, not in different types of locations. It almost suggests that there was an entirely different city below. The most surprising discovery here was a massive stone vase or cylinder. This cylinder extends more than 10 feet downward and features several channels branching out from its sides. And if you knock on the cylinder, you'll hear how much iron compound is in this granite stone. When it was first discovered, there was also a large stone seal covering the top of the cylinder. Both the on-site archaeologists and the caretaker shared the story of the original landowners, who reported that lightning consistently struck the same spot where the cylinder was found underground. When Peruvian archaeologists and the government uncovered the seal, they discovered a mummified Inca body inside the cylinder chamber. Could this cylinder have been reused by the Inca civilization to place a body inside? What I believe is that this stone cylinder was used for a means of metallurgy in high altitude in order to smelt iron. This was an underground blast furnace that used these channels to blast air and water to rapidly cool the cylinder. This stone cylinder was likely used for metallurgy at high altitudes to smelt iron. It functioned as an underground blast furnace utilizing these channels to blast air and water, which helps rapidly cool the cylinder. These ancient humans managed to harness such intense heat to melt metal, and possibly chemicals in stone. However, it's possible they had another method of knowledge for melting stone that has been lost to us over time. Over the past 8 years, I've traveled to many ancient Andean sites called Hanampacha, which in the Quechua language means heaven or cosmological realms. The reason for this is that all of these ancient sites have astronomical alignments to star constellations for many purposes. This shows a sense of culture and connection between these vast ancient cities. Every one of these sites had this in common, but they also had something else in common that's not quite noticed by most people. At the ancient complex called Sacsayhuaman in the city of Cusco in South America, there are massive polygonal monolithic blocks stacked to form a wall that follows a zigzag pattern. Each corner block juts out into the walking path of the citadel's levels. However, one of these corner blocks displayed something unusual and intriguing, providing evidence of stone alteration through heat. Carved into the rock is a mysterious scooped-out shape, resembling a key shape or a snake, with edges that seem to have been carefully melted, as though the very stone was altered by some unseen force. While using my digital field microscope, the details become even more remarkable. Where in these photos, the stone is scooped, a dark obsidian-like residue can be seen, as if the rock itself had once been heated to an intense temperature and then reshaped. This enigmatic mark, unlike anything naturally occurring in the region, hints at a technology or method far beyond what we understand today, suggesting a civilization with knowledge that defies conventional wisdom of altering stone. What ancient hand shaped this stone, and how did they wield such power? Throughout this area in the Andean region, we find other stones with a similar dark obsidian-like layer, suggesting that these ancient blocks may share a common mysterious origin. Local Inca legends tell that one of the last ancient builders or demigods who created this place, while holding a staff, unleashed a brilliant flash of light before vanishing. If we focus on the core of this legend, excluding the part about the person disappearing, what kind of tool or weapon could have been used to generate such heat to alter the stone in this way during the ancient past? Was this a bigger tool and something more than just a staff? According to another Inca legend, the Inca emperor who used a staff to find the city of Cusco was Manco Capac. He was said to have been given a golden staff by the sun god Inti, and where the staff sank into the ground marked the site for the city's founding. Was there an ancient tool used to manipulate the stone, or were multiple methods involved? Located just a few kilometers away at the ancient site of Quenko, resides another stone with the same features from the same mysterious limestone runnels that lead into flat basalt stone bases. This stone also lays alongside the remnants of stone structures from a long-lost civilization. The smooth, glossy layer that coats its surface seems almost intentional, as if it was polished by skilled hands or originally melted on. Using my digital field microscope, I take close-up photos of the stone, revealing the fine texture of the coating. The images show a near-perfect, glossy finish that raises intriguing questions about the methods used to create such a surface. Was it shaped using tools or techniques lost to time? Or could it be the result of natural processes? Here's a video from the microscope, where you can clearly see the fine gloss texture on the surface. Traveling across the Andean region, you'll see many ancient sites with the same stonework. This place is called Kia Rumiok, and in the Quechua language, Kia relates to moon, and Rumi means stone, while Yok serves as an adjective, further enriching the name's meaning. Just north of the site, there lies a small cavern named Salakaka, which in the Quechua language, Sala means woman, and Kaka means rugged cliff wall, or Kaka can also mean a place filled with people. Within this cavern, ancient stone blocks, strikingly similar in style to those found in Quenko, are scattered across the landscape. Before we look at these blocks, I also want to highlight that the same irregular limestone runnel shapes are present on stones in this area. Here, we can observe tunnel marks going into the stone in different directions, all on the same flat surface. After a trek to the site and a careful investigation, I discovered the same distinctive features on these stone blocks using my digital field microscope, drawing a clear connection to this ancient technique. Here are multiple photos taken of this stone at different angles, including my digital field microscope. This is the same type of stone finish, just like Quenko, which is hours away. This specific area of the stone are where places aren't used as much, so this isn't due to friction from human interaction. These stone blocks with this dark layer on it is also in different environments, so it can't be due to humidity. Let's venture even deeper into the Andean mountains to an ancient site known as Watokto. Situated on a small mountaintop, this site is home to an ancient temple with stone blocks of the same construction technique. This temple was rebuilt in modern times and was also repurposed by the Incas. The doorway, the oldest feature of the site, was originally constructed long before the Incas, who later adapted it for their own use. As you approach this doorway, you'll notice the distinct differences in the stonework, reflecting the craftsmanship of this older civilization. As you examine the areas that remain largely untouched and unused, you'll notice a black obsidian-like layer covering the stones. Even under a digital field microscope, the resemblance to other sites become clear. Here's a video using the microscope. It contains the same black obsidian layer that all the stone blocks at the Hanin-Pacha sites use. In addition to the temples and citadels made of stone blocks, there's another location where this layer of glossy obsidian is shown. Situated miles away, in one of the eeriest spots, lies a strange and incredibly mysterious cave I've ever encountered. There's a square recess or engraving on the side of the granite cave wall bearing the same marking. What's unusual about this is that the square is viewed as a false door by us today, but the Incas referred to it as a punku in the Quechua language. Here's a walkthrough video that will guide you through the cave, featuring the false door as well as a strange altar and ruins in front of it, which is made from blue andesite stone. This mysterious cave is called Naupa Iglesia or Naupa Waka in Quechua. Naupa, which means sacred, and Waka means temple. Upon reaching the entrance, you'll find Inca ruins, but the back of the cave is sealed off. On the side of the cave wall, there's the false door, and at the front, overlooking the entrance, sits a mysterious altar. The false door, or punku, also has this layer, but spread across it slightly. The photos of the digital field microscope shows the similar texture. Even the altar in front shows the same characteristics. Both seem to have been shaped by hand with tools, possibly involving heat or combustion from chemicals, rather than just a simple chisel. There may have been various methods used at each of these sites, but are there any unconventional techniques that could have been used before? In ancient times, the Incas, along with earlier civilizations, were skilled craftsmen in metallurgy and created flat pieces of gold. In addition to gold, they also worked with silver and pyrite, both of which were used abundantly. In the published article called Manufactured Light Mirrors in Mesoamerica Realm by Emiliano Garlaga and Mark Blaney, it discusses the topic about how Mesoamerica had the technology for mirrors and how they were widely used. He discusses how the Mayans, along with other nearby civilizations, created mirrors from polished obsidian and polished silver. These cultures documented the process in their paintings, illustrating how they used the mirrors. The Incas and earlier civilizations also polished silver and used it for similar purposes. However, were the polished silver mirrors also employed to reflect intense heat from the sun? This heat can heat a surface to temperatures in the range of 100 to 200 Celsius. With modern technology, we can use Fresnel lenses to melt stone to have this closely resembled layer finish, but it's not quite the same. The texture remains glossy, but it's a deep black obsidian, scorched by intense sunlight. To avoid the black coloration, could chemical combustion have been used alongside reflected sunlight from polished silver? Obsidian can come in different colors, but to achieve the same type of outside layer on these ancient blocks, melting is required. We can only imagine what these stones might have looked like in the past, whether they would have had a deep black color with no texture, or perhaps a golden sheen like obsidian. We've previously considered the possibility that the Corral Supe civilization might have either brought this knowledge or originally built the stone structures rather than the Incas. However, their stonework is distinct, and unlike the stonework we've seen more recently, could this knowledge have been passed down over time by another group of people? The ancient myth of the Inca, Aymara, and earlier civilizations speaks of their god Viracocha, who is believed to be either one of many deities or a singular god responsible for creating the universe. It was also said that he played a key role in the beginning of civilization here on Earth, or perhaps specifically in this region. During an interview with anthropologist Dr. Teo Paredes at the ancient city of Cusco, I asked him about the origins of Viracocha and the various depictions of him as either a deity or a physical person. He explained that it was perhaps neither.
That's what they said.
And when Pedro Cieza de Leon says, when I asked the natives who built this place, white people like ourselves, how would you describe Viracocha after learning many stories, many historical excerpts? What do you think that he would look like, be described as a white man with a beard? But is there anything specific or different?
Well, the real translation of the Viracocha name is Contexe Viracocha Pachayachachej, which means the one who knows how to organize time and space. That's the real meaning of Viracocha. Now, then they say that Viracocha was a guy that didn't walk on the floor, that he was just floating, and he came here and he was teaching to these people here agriculture, medicine, social organization, architecture. And he appears and he shows up in the south of Peru, nearby, and he has been going and doing these kind of teachings until a place where is, I think it's Casma, where he turned to the left. Let's say he was going to the north, then he turned to the left, and he just take his cape, put on the ocean. He goes into the cape as a magical carpet or whatever, and he just left into the ocean with the promise that someday he was going to come back. And everybody says that he was a kind of white man, particularly with a lot of hair. And that's why, I don't believe 100%, they say that when the Spaniards arrive here, they has been called Viracochas, because they look like this god that came here, and he was the great mythical hero of this culture, even long before Manco Cápac and Mama Ocllo.
Both the ancient Inca and Aymara civilizations do recount the story of the Viracochas as a group of people who arrived in this land, also with Viracocha portrayed as elemental forces of nature. Let's listen to both stories of the Incas' depictions of Viracocha being a supernatural type of god, or depicted as a group of people called the Viracochas. In a quote from Pedro Cieza de Leon in 1535 CE about the Incas telling Pedro about the departure of the Viracocha deity, he describes how the spiritual or ancient figure of Viracocha was leaving the world. Pedro writes, "The man arrived on the sea coast, where, holding his mantle, he went in amongst the waves and was never more seen. And as he went, so they gave him the name Viracocha, which means the foam of the sea." According to a modern Quechua dictionary, the word vira means powerful, and cocha means sea or lake. When combining the modern and the 500-year-old definition, the foam could be referring to the white tips of waves. It suggests that Viracocha could symbolize a powerful wave from the sea. What could Viracocha actually represent? Environmental occurrences? One quote is from Guaman Poma de Ayala, a Peruvian indigenous chronicler that writes about the Viracochas in his chronicle, Nueva Crónica y Buen Cabinero. He writes, "The Viracochas came to the Andes from the sea, bearing knowledge and wisdom, and the people believed they were gods. They taught them how to cultivate crops, how to build houses, and how to govern. These Viracochas were like no other people, for they were tall, fair, and bearded." Another quote is from a Spanish chronicler named Pedro Cieza de Leon, who was an explorer and a linguist during the early 1500s. He specifically wrote, "I asked the natives whether these edifices were built in the time of the Incas, and they laughed at the question, affirming that they were made before the Incas ever reigned, but that they could not say who made them. They added that they had heard from their fathers that all we saw was done in one night. From this, and from the fact that they also speak of bearded men on the island of Lake Titicaca, and of others who built the edifice of Vinaque, it may, perhaps, be inferred that before the Incas reigned, there was an intelligent race who came from some unknown part and who did these things. Being few and the natives many, they may all have been killed in the wars." But is there any physical evidence of out-of-place civilizations or groups of people in Peru? In the desert city of Paracas, Peru, there are skulls with unusually elongated shapes. While some of these skulls result from the practice of head binding to elongate the skull, others appear anatomically different. They have more teeth, larger jawlines, bigger eye sockets, and a cranial mass that is higher than that of a typical skull. A blend of head-bound skulls and naturally elongated ones. Was it a ritual to preserve a culture? Or merely a fashion to preserve a style? The true purpose behind the ancient practice of head binding and the identity of those with these mysterious, naturally elongated skulls remains a riddle lost to time. The answers may be lost, but the evidence is marked in stone. Ancient humans, using chemical combustion and primitive techniques, shaped stone in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew about their abilities to manipulate stone in the ancient world.